The people who change your life rarely look important when you first meet them. Riley Evans would remember that thought years later, though at 5:42 on that cold October morning, the stranger beneath the bus shelter looked less like destiny and more like a man who had simply run out of places to go. Dawn had not yet reached the narrow streets of Queens. The sky hung low and grey over the apartment buildings, and the street lights still cast pale circles across the wet pavement. Riley walked quickly, one hand wrapped around the strap of her canvas tote bag and the other holding a cardboard tray with 2 cups of coffee. One was hers. The second belonged to Mrs. Alvarez, the school secretary who opened the front office every morning and believed no human being should be expected to speak before caffeine. Riley had left home 20 minutes early because the subway line was under repair again, forcing her to walk nearly half a mile to a temporary bus stop. The wind slipped beneath the collar of her thrift store coat, sharp enough to make her shoulders rise. She was thinking about spelling tests, a parent conference, and the $32 left in her checking account when she noticed the man sitting alone beneath the shelter. He did not belong there. That was Riley's first thought. His charcoal overcoat was too finely cut. His black shoes were polished despite the rain. Even seated, he carried himself with the quiet stillness of someone accustomed to rooms changing when he entered them. Yet his dark hair was damp, his face looked exhausted, and his hands were empty. No phone, no briefcase, no umbrella. He stared across the street as if he were waiting for an answer that had failed to arrive. Riley slowed. Every sensible instinct told her to keep moving. New York taught caution before kindness. Do not stare. Do not ask questions. Do not make a stranger's trouble your own. Then the man lifted one hand to his temple and Riley saw the faint tremor in his fingers. Not fear, she thought. Cold or exhaustion, maybe both. She stopped beneath the shelter, leaving several feet between them. The man turned his head. His eyes were a deep, guarded brown, and they settled on her with such immediate focus that she almost stepped back. For one strange second, Riley had the feeling that he noticed everything. The loose button on her coat, the rain darkening the toes of her boots, the tiny coffee stain near her thumb. "Are you all right?" she asked. His expression did not change. "I'm fine." His voice was low and controlled, carrying the faintest trace of an Italian-American accent polished by years of careful speech. Riley glanced at his empty hands. "You don't look fine." One corner of his mouth moved, though it was not quite a smile. "Do you always tell strangers what they look like? Only before sunrise?" She shifted the coffee tray, suddenly aware of how foolish she might seem. The second cup was meant for Mrs. Alvarez. Riley pictured the older woman's disappointed face, then looked again at the stranger. He seemed colder than anyone should be while wearing a coat that probably cost more than Riley's monthly rent. She lifted the cup from the tray and held it toward him. "Here," he stared at it. "What is that?" "Coffee. I can see that. Then we're making progress." This time the almost smile reached his eyes before disappearing. He did not take the cup. "Why are you giving it to me?" The question was too serious for something so small. Riley studied him more carefully. There was no embarrassment in his face, only suspicion, as though every gift he had ever received came with conditions hidden beneath it. "Because it's cold," she said, "and because you look like you need it more than I do. You have another one. That one is mine, and this one was for a co-worker." His gaze sharpened. "So someone else loses because of me." Riley sighed softly. "Mrs. Alvarez has survived 63 years. She'll survive one morning without hazelnut coffee." He finally reached for the cup. His fingers brushed the cardboard sleeve rather than her hand, careful and precise. "Hazelnut? Don't judge it before you try it." He looked down at the lid. Steam curled through the small opening, briefly warming the space between them. The bus appeared at the far end of the street, headlights glowing through the thin mist. Riley adjusted her bag. "That's me." The stranger looked up quickly. "What is your name?" She hesitated. The doors of the approaching bus hissed as it stopped at the curb. "Riley." "Riley what?" "Just Riley, stranger." She stepped toward the bus, then glanced back. He still held the coffee untouched, watching her with an intensity she could not understand. "Drink it before it gets cold," she called. The doors closed behind her. Riley found a seat near the window and watched the shelter slide away as the bus pulled into traffic. The man remained beneath the pale streetlight, one hand around the cup she had given him. By the time she reached the next block, she had already begun thinking about attendance sheets and unfinished lesson plans. She did not see the 2 black SUVs turn the corner minutes later. She did not see the men in tailored suits step out and approach the stranger with visible relief. She did not hear one of them address him as Mr. Bellagio, and she could not have known that Marcus Bellagio A man who trusted almost no one and forgot nothing, took his first sip of hazelnut coffee as the sun rose over Queens, then looked at the empty road and quietly said, "Find Riley." Marcus Bellagio had spent most of his life being recognized before he spoke. Restaurant owners straightened when he entered. Lawyers lowered their voices. Men who claimed not to fear anyone suddenly remembered appointments elsewhere. Yet at sunrise, beneath a scratched bus shelter in Queens, Riley Evans had looked directly at him and seen only a tired stranger who needed coffee. That unsettled him more than fear ever had. The black sport utility vehicle moved silently through morning traffic while Marcus sat in the rear seat, the paper cup resting between his hands. Across from him, Daniel Mercer, his most trusted advisor, studied the damp overcoat, the sleepless eyes, and the absurdly ordinary drink. Daniel had learned not to ask unnecessary questions, but curiosity finally defeated caution. "You disappeared for nearly 4 hours. Marcus looked through the tinted window. Storefront gates were rising. Delivery trucks crowded the curb. The city was waking without knowing how close one of its most powerful men had come to losing everything he had built. "My phone was destroyed," Marcus said. "The car would not start." It was true, though incomplete. The previous night had exposed a betrayal inside his organization. Someone had redirected his driver, blocked his communications, and left him stranded miles from the nearest property he controlled. No one had harmed him. No threats had been spoken. That was what made it worse. The message had been simple. Someone close enough to understand his routines believed Marcus could be isolated. Daniel glanced at the cup. "And the coffee?" Marcus lifted it, reading the handwritten order along the side. "Hazelnut, 2 sugars." The ink had blurred beneath Riley's fingers. "A woman gave it to me." Silence settled inside the vehicle. Daniel blinked once. "A woman gave you coffee. You heard me." Marcus remembered her thrift store coat, her worn boots, and the way she had joked with him as though his silence did not intimidate her. No, that answer seemed to interest Daniel even more. What did she want? Marcus turned his gaze from the window. Nothing. He had dealt with thousands of people who claimed to want nothing. Their requests simply arrived later, wrapped in loyalty, praise, or carefully rehearsed gratitude. Riley had surrendered a cup meant for someone else, boarded a city bus, and vanished before he could offer so much as a thank you. She had not waited for his name. She had not photographed him. She had not asked for proof that her kindness mattered. She had simply noticed that he was cold. Marcus took another sip. Coffee had already begun to cool, but he drank it slowly. "Find Riley," he said. Daniel reached for his phone. Last name? She would not give it. Address? No. Workplace? Marcus pictured the canvas tote on her shoulder. A corner of laminated construction paper had protruded from the top, decorated with a child's uneven blue stars. A plastic identification badge had been clipped backward against the strap. He had caught only part of the logo when she turned toward the bus. "She works at a school somewhere along the Q27 route. She left the stop at 5th Avenue and 79th Street at approximately 5:47. Daniel stared at him. "You noticed all of that in 5 minutes?" Marcus looked down at the cup. 4. By 9 that morning, Marcus stood in the top-floor office of Bellagio Holdings, surrounded by glass walls and a view that stretched across Manhattan. On paper, the company owned hotels, warehouses, restaurants, and real estate. The public saw an old family fortune sharpened by modern discipline. They did not see the quiet network beneath it, built from favors, secrets, and promises that lasted longer than contracts. Marcus listened as his security team explained the previous night's failure. A vehicle had been rerouted. A false emergency had separated him from his escort. 3 internal access codes had been used. Someone inside the organization had planned it carefully. Marcus asked no angry questions. He raised no voice. He only requested names, timelines, and records. His calm made the room colder than shouting would have. When the meeting ended, Daniel remained behind. He placed a thin folder on the desk. Riley Evans, 27 years old, 3rd grade teacher at Harbor Point Elementary in Queens. No criminal record, no significant debt beyond student loans. She rents a small apartment about 6 blocks from the bus stop. Marcus did not touch the folder. Family? Her mother died 6 years ago. Her sends him money every month, even though she barely earns enough for herself. Daniel paused. She volunteers at a weekend reading program. She also buys breakfast for 2 students whose families are struggling. Quietly, Marcus looked toward the skyline. The city below appeared clean from this height. Distance concealed broken windows, overdue rent, and people rationing kindness because they had so little to spare. Riley Evans had little, yet she had shared without hesitation. "Does she face any immediate problems?" Marcus asked. Daniel opened the folder. Harbour Point may lose part of its arts and literacy budget. The district announces the decision next month. Marcus finally turned. Do not approach her. Then what are we doing? Nothing she can trace to me. Daniel understood. He closed the folder. Later that afternoon, Riley stood before 24 restless children, trying to explain fractions while wondering why Mrs. Alvarez had hugged her after receiving an anonymous delivery of coffee for the entire faculty. Riley assumed a grateful parent had sent it. She never imagined the order had come from a tower across the river. She never saw Marcus standing alone in his office, the empty paper cup placed beside confidential files he had not yet opened, and she had no reason to know that while his people searched for the traitor who had left him stranded, Marcus kept returning to one impossible question. Why had 5 minutes of ordinary warmth felt more dangerous than an entire night of betrayal? For the next 3 weeks, Riley Evans had the strange feeling that someone was quietly repairing the edges of her life. It began with coffee. Every Monday morning, a delivery arrived at Harbour Point Elementary with enough cups for the entire faculty, each labeled correctly, including Mrs. Alvarez's hazelnut order with 2 sugars. There was never a card, never a company name, only a receipt marked paid. Then the classroom heater that had rattled and coughed since September was replaced overnight. The broken reading lamp in Riley's book corner disappeared on a Friday and returned on Monday with a new shade, a stronger bulb, and no explanation from the maintenance office. Riley asked questions. The principal blamed a delayed district repair request. The custodian shrugged and said someone from central administration had approved the work. Mrs. Alvarez called it a miracle. Riley did not believe in administrative miracles. She believed in paperwork, budget meetings, and waiting 6 months for someone to fix a leaking faucet. Still, every answer led nowhere. Her students were delighted by the changes. They sat beneath the warm vent during morning reading and argued over who could use the new lamp first. Riley should have been grateful. Instead, unease gathered beneath her ribs. Kindness felt different when it arrived without a face. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Principal Bennett asked Riley to stop by the office after dismissal. Riley entered expecting another conversation about test scores or classroom supplies. Instead, she found a cream-colored envelope on the principal's desk. The Harbour Point Literacy Initiative received a private, Principal Bennett said. A large one. Riley remained standing. How large? Enough to preserve the reading program for 3 years. The words should have brought relief. For months, Riley had watched children share worn paperbacks because the school could not afford replacements. She had spent her own money on notebooks, pencils, and library cards. 3 years meant new books, tutoring, family literacy nights. It meant no child being told there was not enough funding to help them read. Yet the timing tightened something in her chest. Who donated it? Principal Bennett adjusted her glasses. The donor requested privacy. Did they mention me? A pause, small but noticeable. They said the gift was inspired by a teacher who believed small acts mattered. Riley looked at the envelope. Her mind returned to a grey morning, a wet bus shelter, and a stranger holding a paper cup as if no one had ever given him anything without asking for payment. He had not known where she worked. He had known only her first name. Still, she remembered the way he had watched her leave, not like a man trying to memorize her face, like a man already certain he would see it again. I need the donor's name, Riley said. I cannot provide it, then return the money. Principal Bennett stared at her. Riley, this donation helps hundreds of children. I know. Then why would we return it? Riley struggled to explain what she barely understood herself. Because generosity should not make people feel watched. The principal's expression softened. No one is asking anything from you. That was the problem. Riley thanked her and left, but the question followed her through the empty hallways. Outside, the rain had slowed to a silver mist. She pulled her coat tighter and walked toward the bus stop, passing a black sedan parked across the street. She noticed it only because the windows were darker than the cloudy afternoon. The car remained still as she waited for the bus. When she looked again, it was gone. Across the East River, Marcus Bellagio stood beside the windows of his office while Daniel Mercer delivered the news. She asked the school to return the donation. Marcus turned from the skyline. Why? She thinks the donor may be watching her. Daniel placed a report on the desk. She is more observant than we expected. Marcus looked at the empty coffee cup he had kept beside a stack of unopened files. It had become a ridiculous object in an otherwise immaculate room. He knew that. He had tried twice to throw it away. Both times he had stopped before reaching the trash. No more deliveries, Marcus said. No more repairs connected to her classroom. Keep the literacy donation in place but separate her name from every document. Daniel nodded, then hesitated. You could simply speak to her. Marcus's expression cooled. And say what? Thank you. The words sounded almost foreign in the room. Marcus had settled debts worth millions of dollars. He had rewarded loyalty with houses, businesses, and protection. Gratitude had always been practical, measured, controlled. Riley had given him something he could not value in money because money had not been part of the exchange. She had seen him at his weakest and offered warmth without curiosity. Speaking to her would mean admitting that 5 quiet minutes had reached a place in him years of power had failed to touch. She wants to be left alone, Marcus said. Daniel glanced toward the cup. Does she? Marcus did not answer. That evening, Riley stayed late arranging new books donated by a neighborhood church. When she finally left the school, the streets were nearly empty. A cold wind moved wrappers along the curb. At the bus shelter, she found a man in a navy coat helping an elderly passenger groceries from a torn paper bag. He looked nothing like the stranger from Dawn, yet Riley's heart still gave a foolish, disappointed beat. She helped collect the last orange before it rolled into the street, then boarded the bus alone. From a car parked half a block away, Marcus watched the bus disappear into traffic. He had come to thank her. Instead, he remained behind tinted glass, held back by a truth he trusted less than any enemy. The city feared Marcus Bellagio because he always knew what to do next. But when it came to Riley Evans, he was beginning to understand that remembering her was easy. Staying away from her would be the difficult part. 2 days later, Riley Evans learned that danger did not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrived as a polite man standing outside a school office, wearing an expensive grey coat and asking the right questions with the wrong smile. It was just after 4 in the afternoon when Mrs. Alvarez called Riley from her classroom. Most of the students had gone home, and rain tapped softly against the windows while Riley sorted worksheets into neat piles. The man introduced himself as Thomas Vale. He said he represented a private foundation interested in supporting Harbor Point Elementary. He knew about the literacy donation. He knew Riley had questioned its source. He even knew which bus she took home. That final detail turned the room cold. Riley kept her expression calm. How did you learn that? She asked. Thomas smiled as though she had made a joke. Public information is easier to find than people realize. Mrs. Alvarez shifted behind the desk, suddenly uncomfortable. Riley looked toward the glass front doors. The street beyond them was nearly empty. I am not interested in discussing the donation, Riley said. Then perhaps we should discuss the man behind it. Her heartbeat changed, not faster, heavier. What man? Thomas watched her carefully. Marcus Bellagio. The name meant nothing for half a second. Then memory connected it to whispers she had heard in restaurants, newspaper photographs she had never studied, and a business empire that seemed to own half the city without ever appearing to try. Bellagio Holdings, luxury hotels, shipping companies, political fundraisers, rumors people lowered their voices to repeat. Riley thought of the stranger beneath the bus shelter, his controlled voice, his unreadable eyes, the black car she had seen outside the school. You are mistaken, she said. Thomas leaned one hand against the counter. Am I? Mrs. Alvarez reached for the telephone. Thomas straightened immediately. There is no need for concern. I only wanted to offer Miss Evans a ride home. She already has one, a voice said from behind him. Riley knew that voice before she turned. Marcus Bellagio stood just inside the entrance, rain shining across the shoulders of his black overcoat. He looked exactly as he had at dawn and nothing like him at all. The exhaustion was gone, so was the uncertainty. Every line of his posture carried quiet authority, and the 2 men waiting near the curb outside made it clear that he had not arrived alone. Thomas Vale's smile disappeared. Mr. Bellagio. Marcus did not return the greeting. His gaze moved first to Riley, checking her face, her hands, the distance between her and the stranger. Only then did he look at Thomas. You will leave. Thomas tried to recover his confidence. I was speaking with Miss Evans about a charitable matter. You were finished before I entered. No threat sharpened Marcus's words. None was needed. Thomas looked at Riley as if he wanted to leave her with a message, but Marcus stepped slightly between them. The movement was small, protective without touching her, final without being aggressive. Thomas buttoned his coat and walked out into the rain. One of the men near the curb watched until he disappeared around the corner. Mrs. Alvarez stared at Marcus, then at Riley. I should call the principal, she said. Please do, Marcus replied, and ask her to review who has access to visitor records. Mrs. Alvarez hurried toward the back office, leaving Riley alone with the man whose name had suddenly changed the meaning of every unexplained event in her life. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Rain whispered against the doors. The fluorescent lights hummed above them. Riley felt embarrassed that she had once mistaken his silence for helplessness. She felt angrier that he had allowed her to remain ignorant. "You found me," she said. Marcus met her eyes. "Yes." "The coffee deliveries?" "Yes." "The repairs?" "Yes." "The literacy money?" He paused. "Yes." Riley folded her arms, not because she was cold, but because she needed something to hold together. "You had no right." Marcus accepted the words without argument. "I know." That answer unsettled her. She had expected denial, justification, perhaps the smooth arrogance of a wealthy man convinced that generosity excused intrusion. Instead, he stood before her with the stillness of someone willing to be judged. "Who was that man?" she asked. "Someone connected to a business dispute. It is the safest, honest one." Riley glanced toward the street. "Did he come because of you?" Marcus did not answer quickly enough. The truth arrived in the silence. Her anger sharpened. "You watched me. You interfered with my school. You brought your problems to my door. I tried to keep my distance. You were parked outside yesterday." His expression changed by the smallest degree. Surprise, then regret. "You saw the car. I noticed things too." For the first time, something almost human moved beneath his composure, not amusement. Respect. "I came to thank you," he said. Riley looked at him, incredulous. "You could have walked inside." "I should have." The simplicity of it left no place for her anger to land. Marcus glanced toward the office where Mrs. Alvarez was speaking on the telephone. "Thomas Vale will not return. Your school will receive additional security through the district with no connection to my name. No more anonymous gifts." "Agreed. No one follows me." His jaw tightened. "Not unless there is a credible risk." "That is not what I said. It is the only promise I can make honestly." Riley studied him. The man beneath the shelter had seemed lost. The man before her seemed capable of controlling every room he entered, except perhaps this one. "Why did 1 cup of coffee matter so much?" she asked. Marcus looked toward the rain-darkened street. When he answered, his voice was quieter. "Because you offered it before you knew whether I deserved it." A black vehicle stopped at the curb. Marcus opened the school door, then stepped aside rather than directing her through it. "Your bus route is not safe tonight," he said. "I will take you home, and after that you may decide whether you ever wish to see me again." Riley should have refused. Every sensible instinct told her to do exactly that. But Thomas Vale knew her schedule. Marcus had arrived before anything worse could happen, and the stranger she had helped at dawn was no stranger now. He was Marcus Bellagio. The city might have feared his name, but as Riley walked past him into the rain, the question that frightened her most was not what kind of man he truly was. It was why she still believed there was goodness in him. The inside of Marcus Bellagio's car was warmer than Riley expected, but the silence between them carried the cold of the rain. She sat near the window with her canvas bag on her lap, watching Queens slide past in blurred storefronts and reflected traffic lights. Marcus sat across from her rather than beside her, leaving enough space to make it clear that she was not trapped. One of his men drove. Another vehicle followed at a distance. Riley noticed both details and said nothing until they had traveled nearly a mile. "Does everyone you help receive an escort?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "No. Then I am not being helped. I am being managed. You are being protected until I understand why Thomas Vale approached you. Protected from a problem I had before today, or from one that began when you found me." The question settled between them. Marcus did not defend, he admitted. Riley turned back toward the window. Honesty should have made the answer easier to accept. It did not. She thought of her students, Mrs. Alvarez, and the unlocked side entrance the staff used after school. Her ordinary life had always felt fragile because of money schedules and small emergencies. Now it felt fragile for reasons she could not name. "Tell me who he is," she said. "Thomas works for Julian Cross, a former business partner." Business partner. That is the legal description, and the honest one? Marcus's eyes remained steady. "Julian believes I possess records that could end his influence in several companies. He wants leverage." Riley felt her fingers tighten around the strap of her bag. "And now he thinks I am leverage. He wanted me to believe that. Is there a difference?" "Yes, he approached you in public. He wanted to be seen. That means he was sending a message, not making a move." Riley disliked how calmly Marcus explained it. She disliked even more that his calm made her feel safer. "You speak about people like pieces on a chessboard. That is how men like Julian think. And you do not?" Marcus glanced toward the rain moving across the glass. "I am trying not to." The answer followed her all the way to her apartment building. The car stopped beside a narrow brick structure with a flickering light above the entrance. Marcus stepped out first and checked the street before opening her door. Riley climbed onto the sidewalk. Marcus looked toward the dark windows on the second floor. I will walk you upstairs. No, Riley, you do not get to use my name like that and expect me to obey. The driver lowered his eyes, suddenly fascinated by the dashboard. Marcus remained. May I walk you upstairs? The difference was small, but Riley heard it. She studied him before answering. You may walk me to the door, then you leave. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of laundry soap and old paint. Their footsteps echoed up 2 flights of stairs. Marcus seemed too large for the narrow space, not because of his height, but because of the quiet authority he carried into it. Riley reached apartment 2C and found a white envelope resting on the floor. Her name was typed across the front. Marcus saw it at the same moment. Do not touch it, he said. Riley froze. It might be from the landlord. Your landlord would slide it under the door or place it in the mailbox. Marcus removed a handkerchief from his coat and lifted the envelope carefully. There was nothing threatening inside, only a printed photograph of Riley entering Harbor Point Elementary that morning. Beneath it was a single sentence. Ask Marcus what kindness costs. Riley stared at the words until they blurred. Marcus's expression did not change, but something in him became colder, not loud, not cruel, focused. You said Thomas was only sending a message, Riley whispered. I was wrong. He folded the photograph inside the handkerchief. You cannot stay here tonight. Riley unlocked her door and stepped inside. I am not abandoning my home because a stranger left a photograph. Marcus followed only as far as the threshold. The apartment behind her was small but warm, filled with books, mismatched furniture, and children's drawings taped beside the kitchen. He looked at the room as though it revealed more about her than any file Daniel could prepare. This is not about fear, he said. It is about giving me time to remove your name from Julian's plans. Your solution is to take control again. My solution is to keep you safe. Riley faced him across the doorway. And what happens after that? Another donation? A different apartment? A driver waiting outside my school? You keep treating kindness like a debt you can settle with money and security. Marcus's jaw tightened. I do not know another way. There it was. Not an excuse, a confession. Riley's anger softened, though she did not let it disappear. Then learn. He looked at her for a long moment. The hallway light hummed above them. Tell me how. Riley glanced at the photograph in his hand. Start by giving me the truth. All of it. No careful answers. No anonymous gifts. No deciding what I can handle. And tonight I choose where I go. Marcus nodded once. Agreed. Riley packed a small overnight bag and called Mrs. Alvarez, who lived 15 minutes away and had already offered her guest room many times. Marcus arranged for the building entrance to be watched or touching Riley's belongings. Before she stepped into the car again, he offered her a slim black card. My direct number, he said. No assistant, no office. Riley took it but did not put it away. This does not repay the coffee. Marcus met her eyes. I am beginning to understand that nothing will. For the first time that evening, Riley saw the man beneath the name the city feared. He was not asking how much her kindness was worth. He was asking whether he could become worthy of it. By 7 the next morning, Riley Evans understood that safety could feel almost as unsettling as danger. Mrs. Alvarez had made pancakes, brewed too much coffee, and insisted that Riley take the bedroom while she slept on the living room sofa. Outside the narrow townhouse, a dark sedan had remained parked beneath a bare maple tree through the night. The men inside never approached the door. They never looked toward the windows. Still, Riley knew they were there because Marcus had decided the risk was real, and that knowledge followed her from room to room. She called Harbor Point Elementary before breakfast and told Principal Bennett she would not be coming in. It was the first sick day she had taken in 2 years. Although she was not sick, she was afraid. Admitting that, even silently, made her angry. At 8:15, Marcus called. Riley recognized the number from the black card before she answered. You said this was direct, she said. It is. His voice sounded lower than usual, as though he had not slept. Did anything happen overnight? Nothing except Mrs. Alvarez trying to feed me enough pancakes for an entire school district. A brief silence followed. Riley could almost hear him deciding whether humor was permitted. That sounds serious. You are learning. The warmth in her voice disappeared when she remembered the photograph. What have you found? Marcus did not avoid the question. Thomas Vale used a temporary security badge to enter the school. The badge was approved through an outside contractor connected to Julian Cross. The photograph at your apartment was taken by someone who followed you from the bus stop. Riley looked toward the front window. The curtain was closed, but pale morning light pressed through the fabric. So this started before Thomas spoke to me. Yes, How long before? At least 4 days. The answer chilled her more than the October wind had. 4 days meant someone had watched her grade papers at the coffee shop, carry groceries home, and wait alone beneath streetlights. Her ordinary routines had become information in someone else's hands. "Why did Julian choose me?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for one breath too long. "Because I reacted when Thomas approached you. That cannot be the first reason. He already knew who I was." "He learned about the school donation." Riley closed her eyes. "The donation you made, yes." There was no defense in his voice. Marcus had wanted to reward her kindness without entering her life. Instead, the money had drawn a line directly from him to her. Riley gripped the phone. "You marked me. I know. You promised the donation could not be traced. I believed it could not, but it was, yes." Each honest answer sounded like a stone placed between them. Riley wanted him to argue so she could remain angry. He did not. "I am sorry," Marcus said. The words were simple and polished, and heavier than any explanation. "Sorry does not change what happened. No, it does not." Mrs. Alvarez entered the kitchen carrying a plate, saw Riley's expression, and quietly set it down before leaving again. Riley lowered her voice. "What happens now?" "Julian expects me to move you somewhere hidden. He expects fear to make me predictable. And will it? Not if you choose the next step." Riley sat at the small kitchen table. "You are asking me? You told me to learn." The reminder caught her off guard. Marcus continued before she could answer. "There is a townhouse in Brooklyn Heights owned by an elderly woman named Elena Bellagio. She is my aunt. She has no connection to my business and no patience for my authority. You would have a private room. You could leave whenever you wished. Mrs. Alvarez may come with you." "Why your aunt?" "Because no one enters her home without permission, including me." Riley almost smiled. "I would like to meet the woman who tells Marcus Bellagio no. You may enjoy it too much." The quiet humor vanished when he added, "Your apartment, no, it is being checked. I do not want you returning alone." Riley stared at the steams rising from her untouched coffee. "I will go to your aunt's house for 48 hours. Mrs. Alvarez stays here. She should not be pulled into this any further." "Agreed, and I want to keep teaching." "The school is not secure yet. Then make it secure without turning it into a fortress." "Riley, my students did nothing wrong. I will not disappear without explaining why." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Give me 1 day. Until tomorrow morning." "Until tomorrow morning," he agreed. An hour later, Riley stepped outside with her overnight bag. The city looked unchanged. A delivery truck blocked half the street. A dog barked behind a fence. Somewhere nearby, a radio played an old soul song through an open window. Marcus stood beside the waiting car, wearing a navy overcoat and holding 2 paper cups. He offered one to her. Riley read the label. "Plain coffee with 1 sugar," her usual order. "You remembered," she said. "I remember everything connected to you." The words were not flirtation, they were a fact, and somehow that made them more dangerous. Riley accepted the cup but did not enter the car. "Do you remember that I asked for the truth?" "Yes." "Then tell me what Julian really wants." Marcus looked down the quiet street before meeting her eyes. "He wants access to records that prove he stole from people who trusted him. I intend to give those records to federal investigators." Riley studied his face. "And he thinks threatening me will stop you. He thinks kindness made me weak." Marcus opened the car door, but his gaze never left hers. "He is wrong about the weakness. He is not wrong that you changed what I am willing to protect." Elena Bellagio opened the front door before Marcus could knock, took one look at Riley Evans and said, "So you are the reason my nephew has forgotten how to sleep." Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. Riley almost laughed. The townhouse stood on a quiet Brooklyn Heights street lined with brownstones and old trees. Less than 2 miles from Manhattan, but far enough from Marcus's glass tower to feel like another world. Brass numbers shone beside the door. Flower boxes rested beneath the windows. Nothing about the place suggested danger, secrecy, or the kind of power that followed Marcus into every room. Elena was in her late 60s, with silver hair cut neatly at her chin, and the steady gaze of someone who had spent a lifetime refusing to be impressed. She pulled Riley into the warmth of the house without waiting for an introduction. "You must be cold. Come inside." "Marcus, do not stand there, making the doorway look expensive." Marcus obeyed. That surprised Riley more than anything she had seen so far. The living room smelled of lemon polish, old books, and something sweet baking in the kitchen. Family photographs covered one wall. In several of them, a younger Marcus stood beside Elena, with the same serious expression he wore now. Although his shoulders had not yet learned to carry the weight of an empire, Riley paused before a picture of him at perhaps 12 years old, holding a science fair ribbon and trying not to smile. "He was furious about second place," Elena said. I was not furious, Marcus replied from behind them. You refused dessert for 3 days. The judging was inconsistent. Riley looked at him. You held a grudge against a science fair? I questioned the process. Elena gave Riley a knowing look. He was unbearable even then. For the first time since Thomas Vale had entered the school, the tension inside Riley loosened. Elena showed her a guest room on the 3rd floor with pale blue walls, a quilt folded across the bed, and a window overlooking a narrow garden. You may lock the door, Elena said. You may leave whenever you choose. No one in this family is allowed to confuse protection with ownership. Her gaze shifted toward Marcus. Some of us require reminders. Marcus accepted the rebuke without protest. Riley set down her bag. Thank you for letting me stay. Elena touched her arm gently. You are not a burden. Whatever Marcus has failed to explain, we will survive the explanation together. By noon, 2 security officers had taken quiet positions outside the townhouse. They wore plain clothes and kept their distance. Riley noticed that Marcus had honored her request. No men crowded the hallway. No one examined her belongings. No locks were changed around her. He had created a boundary around the house without building a cage inside it. That afternoon, Riley sat at Elena's kitchen table, reviewing lesson plans while Marcus spoke with Daniel Mercer in the adjoining room. The door remained open. Riley had not intended to listen, but one sentence caught her attention. The federal meeting moves forward tomorrow, Marcus said. Daniel lowered his voice, though not enough. Julian knows. Someone is still giving him information. Riley stopped writing. The traitor inside Marcus's organization had not been found. That meant Julian's reach extended beyond Thomas Vale. Marcus noticed Riley watching and ended the conversation. Daniel left through the rear entrance. Marcus returned to the kitchen, removed his coat, and sat across from her. Without the formal office, the guards, or the dark car, he looked less like the name people whispered, and more like the exhausted stranger from the bus shelter. You heard, he said. Enough. Riley closed the folder in front of her. You still do not know who betrayed you. No. Then how do you know this house is safe? Because Elena's staff has been with her for decades and the security team outside reports directly to Daniel. You trust Daniel? With my life. Riley studied his face. That is not the same as trusting him with mine. Marcus did not flinch. No, it is not. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small key on the table. The front door, the garden gate, the guest room has a separate lock. You keep the key. Riley looked at it but did not touch it. What are you trying to prove? That the choice remains yours. And if I walk out now, his jaw tightened before he answered, I would ask you not to. Ask, yes. Not order, no. Riley picked up the key. It was warm from his pocket. You really are learning. Marcus leaned back slightly. Slowly, Elena entered carrying a tray with tea and 3 slices of apple cake. She set one plate in front of Riley and another in front of Marcus. He learns faster when someone refuses to fear him, she said. Most people fear him before breakfast. Most people have better judgment, Marcus replied. Elena left with a satisfied smile. Riley took a bite of cake and watched him over the rim of her cup. Why did you keep the coffee cup, she asked. Marcus went still. Daniel told you? No. I saw it on your desk when you sent the photograph of the donation papers to Principal Bennett. He looked almost embarrassed, which Riley had not believed possible. I meant to throw it away, but you did not. No. Why? Marcus looked toward the garden window. Bare branches moved against the grey sky. Because that morning I had spent hours wondering which person close to me had decided I was worth betraying. Then you appeared and treated me as though I was worth helping. Riley felt the room quiet around them. His words carried no demand, no attempt to make her responsible for healing him. They were simply true. You did not know me, he continued. That was the point. Riley folded her hands around the warm cup. Maybe people should not have to earn every small kindness. Marcus met her eyes. In my world they do, then your world is wrong. A softer man might have smiled. Marcus only looked at her as if she had placed an unfamiliar possibility in front of him. That evening, Riley called her students through the school's online classroom and explained that she would return soon. Marcus remained in the hallway, far enough away to give her privacy. When one child asked whether Miss Evans was scared, Riley answered honestly, a little. But being scared does not mean we stop making good choices. After the call, she found Marcus still waiting. Tomorrow morning, she said. You promised I could teach. The school has new visitor controls. A district officer will remain near the entrance. No one will enter your classroom. And you? I will stay away unless you call. Riley searched his face for resistance. There was plenty of it, but he kept it behind the promise. Thank you, she said. Marcus nodded. Then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and every trace of warmth vanished. Riley watched him answer without speaking. Daniel's voice was faint but urgent. When the call ended, Marcus looked toward the dark front windows. "What happened?" Riley asked. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Julian knows where you are." The key in Riley's hand suddenly felt very small. Marcus stepped closer, not touching her, but placing himself between her and the glass. "Someone inside my circle gave him this address less than an hour ago," he said. Riley looked at the locked door, the quiet hallway, and the family photographs on the wall. The safe house had not failed because its walls were weak. It had failed because trust was. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not call for panic. He simply moved through Elena Bellagio's townhouse with a precision that made Riley understand how often he had prepared for moments like this. The security officers outside were reassigned. Daniel Mercer was ordered to verify every person who had received the address. Elena locked the garden entrance, then returned to the living room carrying her tea as if betrayal were merely another inconvenience the family had survived before. Riley stood near the staircase, the small brass key still pressed into her palm. "Are we leaving?" she asked. Marcus looked toward the front windows. "Not yet. You just said Julian knows where I am. He knows the address. He does not know whether we are still here." Riley heard the distinction, but it offered little comfort. Marcus asked Elena to go upstairs. She refused. "This is my home," she said. "You may protect it, Marcus. You may not remove me from it." For one brief second, the powerful man who controlled boardrooms and guarded secrets looked like the 12-year-old boy in the photograph. "Please," he said. Elena studied him, then nodded. 10 minutes. "After that, I expect the truth." She took Riley's hand before climbing the stairs. Do not let him confuse silence with strength. When Elena disappeared, Marcus turned to Riley. "There is a service exit through the basement. A car is waiting 2 blocks away, because leaving immediately is what Julian expects." Riley looked at the locked door. "You are using the house as a test. I am using the information leak as a test." His phone vibrated. He read the message and placed it face down on the table. "Only 4 people knew this address before tonight: Daniel, my driver Paul, the head of security Grant Keller, and my attorney Nathan Cole. What about the officers outside?" "They received the location after we arrived." "And Elena's staff? They were told a guest was coming, not who." Riley watched him arrange names as though building a lesson on the kitchen table. "How does knowing the traitor help us right now?" "I gave each person a different departure plan. Understanding arrived slowly. Different cars, different routes." Marcus nodded. "Julian's people will move toward whichever plan was leaked." Riley stared at him. "You planned this after Daniel called?" Before I ended of it unsettled her, but beneath that unease was reluctant admiration. Marcus did not react to danger. He shaped it into information. Still, she remembered what Elena had said. Silence was not always strength. "And what did you tell Daniel?" Riley asked. "That we would leave through the basement at 8:30. She looked at the clock. 8:22, which is exactly what you just told me. Marcus met her eyes. "Yes, you are testing Daniel. I am testing everyone." Riley felt the words like a draft beneath a closed door. "You said you trusted him with your life." "I do, but not with mine." Marcus's expression tightened. She had repeated his own distinction back to him, and they both knew it. At 8:26, his phone lit again. This time he answered. Daniel's voice came through clearly enough for Riley to hear. A dark sedan had appeared near the basement route. Another vehicle waited near the street assigned to Nathan Cole. Nothing had moved near the routes given to Paul or Grant. Marcus ended the call. 2 leaks, Riley said. "Or one person had access to 2 messages, Marcus replied. "Who could see both?" "Nathan oversees legal communications. Daniel coordinates security." Riley watched him absorb the implication. For the first time since she had met him, Marcus seemed not uncertain but wounded. The possibility that Daniel had betrayed him reached somewhere beyond strategy. "There may be another explanation," she said. "There usually is," Marcus answered. "That does not make it the correct one." He walked toward the bookshelf and removed a framed photograph. Riley expected a hidden safe. Instead, he opened a small cabinet and took out a thick folder bound with a blue ribbon. "What is that?" "The original evidence against Julian." Riley looked toward the front door. "You brought it here?" "No. Elena has kept it for 8 years. The revelation stunned her. Marcus handed her the folder but did not release it immediately. "My father trusted Julian. When the companies began losing money, my father blamed himself. He died believing he had failed everyone who depended on him." Riley felt the weight of the folder pass into her housed it. He moved money through shell companies, destroyed records, and persuaded my father that the losses came from his own decisions. Marcus's voice remained controlled, but Riley could hear the old grief beneath it. I rebuilt the businesses. I recovered most of what was lost. But I could not prove what Julian had done until 2 years ago. Why did Elena keep the originals? Because she was the only person Julian never considered important. A quiet sadness crossed his face. He underestimated her because she was kind. Riley looked down at the folder. Like the single word changed the room. Julian had mistaken warmth for weakness twice, once with Elena, once with Riley. Marcus had spent years answering betrayal with control. Yet the evidence capable of ending Julian's influence had survived because he trusted a woman who refused to be intimidated. "What happens now?" Riley asked. "We leave through a route no one was given. Elena goes first with a federal protection officer. You come with me." Riley looked up sharply. "Why me?" "Because every person watching me will assume I carry it. That makes me part of the plan. Only if you agree." Marcus waited. No command, no assumption. Riley understood the danger was not physical force but choice under pressure. She could refuse, he would find another way. Yet the folder in her hands held the truth that had shaped his life, his father's shame and Julian's power. "I agree," she said. Marcus exhaled as though he had been holding his breath. "Then you do exactly what I say for the next 15 minutes. Riley lifted one eyebrow. "You almost sounded like yourself again." A faint smile touched his face. "I am still learning." They moved through the pantry to a narrow staircase that led beneath the garden. Elena waited below in a wool coat, perfectly composed. She kissed Marcus's cheek, then looked at Riley. "Now you know," she said softly. Riley held the folder close. Above them, the townhouse remained quiet, warm, and apparently occupied. Below, Marcus opened an old iron door leading to a passage beneath the neighboring building. As Riley stepped into the darkness beside him, she realized the man the city called ruthless had built his strongest defense not from fear, but from the few people he still dared to trust. The question was no longer whether Marcus Bellagio had a human heart. The question was which person closest to it had decided to sell its secrets. The passage beneath the neighboring building was narrow, dry, and older than the streets above it. Riley followed Elena first, with Marcus close behind, while the blue ribbon folder rested inside Riley's canvas bag beneath a stack of lesson plans. The ordinary papers made the evidence feel strangely hidden, as though years of deception had been reduced to something a teacher might carry between spelling tests. At the end of the passage, a federal protection officer waited beside an unmarked car in a private garage. Elena was escorted away through a separate exit, but not before taking Marcus's face between both hands. "Do not become your father by believing every failure is yours," she told him. Marcus said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Riley and Marcus entered another car with Daniel Mercer already behind the wheel. The moment Riley saw him, she remembered the 2 leaked roots. Daniel's face showed no surprise at the folder being absent from Marcus's hands. That could mean innocence. It could also mean preparation. Marcus sat beside Riley in the rear seat, his posture controlled, but she noticed the tension in his right hand. He did not trust easily. Doubting Daniel was costing him more than he would admit. "Where are we going?" Riley asked. "A federal office in Lower Manhattan," Daniel said. The meeting was moved. "Who approved the new location?" Marcus asked. "Agent Nora Whitman. She contacted me through the secure line." Marcus looked through the rear window. "And Nathan Cole. He claims his phone was accessed remotely. Grant is reviewing the records." Riley listened to the language of suspicion moving between them. No accusation, no defense. Only facts placed carefully on a table neither man wanted to overturn. The car crossed the Brooklyn Bridge under a pale morning sky. Traffic crawled around them. Horns sounded. Pedestrians hurried along the walkway. Unaware it could dismantle Julian Cross's influence. Riley watched Marcus study every vehicle behind them. "You have not asked whether I am afraid," she said quietly. His eyes shifted to her. "Are you?" "Yes, I know, that is not the same as asking." Marcus looked down for a moment. "Are you afraid?" Riley appreciated that he corrected himself instead of pretending he had not needed to. "More than yesterday, less than an hour ago. Why less?" "Because I chose to come." Marcus understood. Fear felt different when choice remained beside it. Daniel turned onto a side street 3 blocks from the federal building. His phone rang through the car speakers. Grant Keller's voice filled the cabin. "We found the source." Nathan's account was copied, but he was not the one sending the information. Marcus leaned forward. "Who was?" A pause followed. "Paul Danner, Marcus's driver." The man who had known the false route, the man who had been present the night Marcus was stranded. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Paul only knew one route. He accessed Nathan's message archive from a company tablet 2 days ago, Grant said. He had both plans, the pieces aligned with painful clarity. Paul had been close enough to study Marcus's routines, patient enough to use other people's access, and trusted enough to remain invisible. Where is he now? Marcus asked. He did not report this morning. His apartment is empty. Grant hesitated. There is more. Julian has scheduled a press conference at noon. He plans to accuse Bellagio Holdings of financial misconduct and claim the federal records were fabricated. Riley looked at Marcus. He wants to discredit the evidence before it is delivered. Yes, Marcus said. His voice had gone quiet. And Paul knows the original documents are with Elena. Riley felt the folders weight against her side. Then he may believe Elena still has them. Marcus turned toward Daniel. Call the officer escorting her. Daniel made the call. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Riley's fear returned, sharp and immediate. Marcus reached for his phone, but Riley caught his sleeve before he could speak. Elena knew someone might be listening, she said. She told you not to become your father. That was not only comfort. Marcus looked at her. Riley remembered the way Elena had kissed his cheek in the basement, the careful pause before she stepped into the other car. She was giving you a warning. She expected the escort route to be watched. Daniel glanced at them through the mirror. Agent Whitman assigned that officer herself. Then call Agent Whitman directly, Riley said. Daniel did. The agent answered on the first ring. Elena was safe. The unmarked car had been a decoy. She had transferred to a city maintenance vehicle before leaving Brooklyn Heights, exactly as Elena had requested. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, relief passing over his face before control returned. She planned that without telling me, he said. Riley almost smiled. Now you know how it feels. Daniel received another message and pulled to the curb. The federal office is compromised. Paul used his old credentials to access the visitor schedule. Agent Whitman wants the evidence delivered to the Courthouse Records Division instead. Marcus looked at Riley's bag. No, every change creates another chance for the route to leak. Then what do we do? Daniel asked. Riley looked across the street. Harbor Point Elementary stood less than half a mile away, its brick walls familiar against the morning traffic. An idea formed with the simplicity of a classroom exercise. You stop moving the folder, she said. Marcus studied her. Explain. Julian expects you to deliver it. Paul expects Elena to have it. No one expects a third-grade teacher to place it somewhere public, documented and protected by ordinary rules. Riley took out her phone and called Principal Bennett. 10 minutes later, they entered Harbor Point through the newly secured front doors. Agent Whitman met them inside the principal's office with 2 federal clerks and a portable evidence scanner. Every page was copied, numbered, witnessed, and uploaded to a protected government archive. The original folder was sealed in front of Riley, Marcus, Daniel, and the school principal. Julian's plan had depended on secrecy. Riley defeated it with procedure. When the last document was certified, Marcus looked at her as though the room had shifted around him. You trusted the system, he said. I trusted witnesses, Riley replied. His phone rang before he could answer. Julian Cross was calling directly. Marcus placed the phone on speaker. Julian's voice arrived smooth and confident. You are running out of places to hide the truth. Marcus looked at the sealed evidence resting beneath the fluorescent lights of an elementary school office. Then he looked at Riley. I am not hiding it anymore, he said. For the first time, Julian had no immediate reply. The silence lasted only 3 seconds, but Riley heard the balance of power change inside it. Julian Cross recovered from the silence with a soft laugh that made Riley trust him even less. You always did mistake paperwork for victory, Marcus. Marcus stood beside the principal's desk, one hand resting near the sealed evidence bag. The records are already in federal custody. Records can be questioned. Witnesses can change their memories. Julian paused. Teachers understand how persuasive consequences can be. Riley felt every person in the office become still. Agent Nora Whitman reached for the phone, but Marcus lifted one finger, asking her to wait. His expression remained calm, yet Riley saw the change in his eyes. Julian had not threatened her directly. He had done something more calculated. He had reminded Marcus that Harbor Point was filled with children whose safety Riley valued above her own. The school is protected, Marcus said. For today, Julian replied, but schools open every morning. The call ended. Riley looked through the office window at the colorful hallway beyond it. Paper leaves decorated the walls. A row of backpacks hung beneath handwritten names. The world Julian was trying to use as leverage was not abstract to her. It belonged to children who still believed adults could keep promises. "He wants me to leave," Riley said. Agent Whitman shook her head. "He wants you to panic. Those can be the same thing." Marcus turned to the federal agent. "Close the building tomorrow. Use a maintenance notice. No students or staff until Julian is in custody." Principal Bennett stiffened. "You cannot close a public school because one man made a phone call." "I can request it," Marcus said. "The district decides." Riley faced him. "And when does it reopen? When Julian is arrested, when Paul is found, when every person who dislikes you forgets my name?" Marcus did not answer. He had learned not to lie to her, and the truth offered no easy deadline. Agent Whitman arranged temporary protection for the school while Daniel contacted the district. By noon, Julian's press conference had begun. Screens across the principal's office showed him standing behind a polished podium in a Manhattan hotel, denying financial misconduct and accusing Bellagio Holdings of creating false records to destroy a competitor. He spoke with the practiced confidence of a man who expected repetition to become truth. Then reporters began receiving certified copies of the evidence through the federal court system. Julian's smile weakened, questions changed. Cameras remained fixed on him as the story he had prepared slipped beyond his control. Riley should have felt relieved. Instead, she watched Marcus. Victory did not soften him, it made him more alert. Julian had lost the public argument, but Paul Dana was still missing, and Marcus understood that desperate men rarely accepted defeat quietly. Shortly before 3, Agent Whitman received confirmation that the district would close Harbor Point for 2 days. Riley helped Principal Bennett notify families, then returned to her classroom to collect lesson materials. Marcus followed her to the doorway but did not enter. "I can do this alone," she said. "I know. Then why are you standing there? Because knowing you can do something alone does not mean I should leave you alone." Riley placed worksheets into her bag. That sounded almost healthy. "Alina has been giving me advice. That explains it." His faint smile disappeared when the fire alarm sounded. The sharp ringing filled the hallway. Red lights flashed above the doors. Riley moved automatically toward the evacuation route. Marcus stepped in front of her. "Wait. We cannot wait during an alarm. There is no smoke." Principal Bennett appeared at the end of the hall, directing the remaining staff toward the front exit. A recorded voice announced that everyone should leave through the east doors. Riley looked at Marcus. The east doors were not part of the normal evacuation plan. His phone rang. Daniel's voice came through urgently. The alarm had been activated through the building's maintenance system using credentials connected to Paul Dana. Marcus told everyone to remain inside the secured front office, but Riley heard a child's voice from the classroom across the hall. "Miss Evans?" She froze. One of her students, 9-year-old Caleb Morris, stood inside the doorway holding a forgotten lunchbox. His mother must have brought him back after dismissal. Riley crossed the hall before Marcus could stop her. "Caleb, come with me." The boy ran toward her, frightened by the alarm. Riley took his hand and guided him toward the main office. Then the hallway lights went dark. Emergency lights flickered on. A man wearing a district maintenance jacket stepped through the east stairwell door. Riley recognized Paul from a company photograph Daniel had shown Marcus in the car. He did not carry a weapon. He did not need one. He held up a phone displaying a live video of Mrs. Alvarez entering her townhouse. "Send the boy into the office," Paul said. "Then come with me or your friend becomes Julian's next message." Marcus appeared behind Riley, his voice low and steady. "Paul, this ends now." Paul looked at him with exhausted resentment. "It ended for me years ago. Julian only offered a price for admitting it." Riley squeezed Caleb's hand, then whispered for him to run to Marcus. The child obeyed. Marcus guided him behind his back without taking his eyes from Paul. Riley understood the choice placed before her. If Marcus moved toward Paul, Mrs. Alvarez might be endangered. If Riley refused, Paul could disappear and Julian would continue using innocent people. She looked at Marcus. "Trust me," she said, his face changed. "Riley, no. You said fear should not choose for me." She stepped toward the east stairwell before he could answer. Paul opened the door and motioned her through. Marcus did not follow, but the restraint cost him visibly. Riley descended one flight beside Paul, listening to the alarm echo through the concrete stairwell. At the landing, she saw an exit leading to the alley and a parked delivery van beyond it. Paul reached for the door. Riley stopped. "Mrs. Alvarez is not in danger," she said. Paul glanced back. "You saw the video. I saw yesterday's coat and this morning's grocery bag. She left for her sister's house before noon." Doubt crossed his face. Riley had noticed what Julian assumed she would miss. That single hesitation was enough. Agent Whitman entered from the lower stairwell while Daniel appeared above them. Paul found himself surrounded not by force, but by the consequences of a plan built on underestimating a teacher. Riley stepped away from him. Moments later, federal officers took control of the stairwell. Marcus reached her without running, but his breathing revealed how close fear had come to breaking his discipline. "You knew the video was old?" he asked. "I hoped." His eyes closed briefly. "That is not the same thing." "No." Riley looked toward the officers leading Paul away, but it was enough. Marcus met her gaze, shaken by a truth he could no longer control. The evidence had protected his empire. Riley's courage had protected the people he could not afford to lose. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Bellagio understood that loving someone was not the same as keeping them behind walls. It was trusting them to stand beside you when the walls began to fall. Paul Danner did not resist the federal officers. He looked less like a dangerous man than someone who had spent too many years making small compromises until he could no longer remember where the first one began. Riley stood beside the stairwell wall while Agent Whitman read him his rights, and Daniel Mercer collected the phone used to display the false video of Mrs. Alvarez. The fire alarm stopped. The sudden silence felt louder than the ringing had. Marcus remained close to Riley without touching her. His control had returned, but not completely. She could see it in the way his gaze kept moving over her face, checking for signs she had been frightened beyond what she would admit. "I am all right," she said. "You cannot know that yet." His voice was quiet. That answer reached him. Marcus looked away for a moment, then nodded. Caleb had been reunited with his mother in the principal's office. Mrs. Alvarez was confirmed safe at her sister's house. Harbor Point remained closed while federal investigators documented the misuse of the maintenance system. Every immediate danger had passed, yet Riley felt the weight of the day settle only after there was no longer anything urgent to do. Her hands began to shake. Marcus noticed before she did. He removed his overcoat and placed it around her shoulders with careful distance. "Sit down," he said, then corrected himself. "Please." Riley sat on the bottom stair. Marcus lowered himself beside her, leaving several inches between them. For a man who had spent his life standing above others, the simple act of sitting on a concrete step felt strangely honest. "You were right," Riley said after a while. "About what?" Hoping was not the same as knowing. Marcus stared toward the closed exit door. "You should never have needed to take that risk. Paul chose the risk. Julian created it. You did not. My choices brought them to you, and mine kept me involved." He turned toward her. Riley held his gaze. "Do not take away my responsibility just so you can carry all the blame. That is another form of control." Marcus absorbed the words in silence. Then he said, "I do not know how to care about someone without calculating every way I could lose them." Riley felt the truth beneath his calm minute. "I do not know how. Start with this one." She reached across the small space and placed her hand over his. Marcus went still. His hand was warm beneath hers, steady only because he forced it to be. Riley did not offer the gesture as forgiveness. It was something smaller and more immediate, proof that she was there, proof that fear had not erased choice. Marcus turned his hand and held hers gently. No claim, no pressure, only gratitude. Agent Whitman found them several minutes later. "Paul is cooperating," she said. "He has provided access to messages, payment records, and recorded instructions from Julian Cross. The evidence connects Julian directly to the security breaches, the surveillance of Miss Evans, and the attempted interference with the federal investigation." Marcus stood. Riley rose beside him, still wearing his coat. "Where is Julian?" he asked. "Federal agents detained him at his hotel before he could leave the city." The news did not create celebration, it created release. A pressure that had shaped every decision for weeks finally began to lift. Agent Whitman continued. "Nathan Cole has been cleared. Grant Keller has turned over all internal records. Daniel's communications were clean. Paul acted alone inside your organization." Marcus looked toward Daniel, who stood near the office doors. For the first time since the leaked route, something unspoken passed between the two men. Relief, regret, loyalty tested and returned. Daniel gave a small nod. Marcus answered with the same. By evening, Julian Cross's press conference had become evidence against him. His public statements contradicted financial records already certified by the court. News outlets reported that several companies connected to him were under federal review. Former employees began contacting investigators. People who had remained silent when Julian seemed untouchable discovered courage when his power became uncertain. Marcus watched the reports from Elena's living room while Riley sat near the fireplace with a cup of tea. Elena had returned home before sunset and greeted Riley with a long embrace, then scolded Marcus for allowing a teacher to solve a problem his entire security team had missed. "She notices details," Marcus said. "Yes," Elena replied. "That is why you should stop assuming silence hides them. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, and apple cake left from the previous day. For the first time, no security call interrupted the meal, no unknown car waited outside, no hidden message changed the plan. Elena told stories about Marcus as a child. Riley learned that he had once rescued an injured pigeon, hidden it in the attic, and denied hearing the flapping for 3 days. Marcus claimed the story had been exaggerated. Elena produced a photograph. Riley laughed until the tension in her chest finally broke. Later, after Elena went upstairs, Marcus walked Riley to the front door. The street beyond it was quiet under a clear autumn sky. "Your apartment has been cleared," he said. "The school will reopen Monday. Federal protection will remain nearby until Julian's associates are fully identified." Riley nodded. "It stays only if the school board accepts it without your name attached and without any conditions from me. That is reasonable. I have been practicing." She looked at him. The man before her was still Marcus Bellagio, powerful, guarded, surrounded by a world built on influence and secrets. But something had changed. He no longer stood as though every problem belonged to him alone. "What happens to your organization now?" she asked. Marcus looked toward the dark windows across the street. "I remove every business that cannot survive public scrutiny. I cooperate with the investigation. I stop protecting traditions that deserve to end. That could cost you a great deal." "It should." Riley heard no bitterness in the answer, only decision. Marcus reached into her coffee cup, now flattened slightly from weeks on his desk. Riley stared at it. "You brought that here?" "I thought I might need to return it. That is not how disposable cups work." A rare smile appeared. He held it for a moment, then placed it in the recycling bin beside Elena's door. Riley watched him let it go. The gesture was small, almost ridiculous, yet she understood what it meant. He was not discarding the memory, he was releasing the debt. Marcus looked at her with nothing left in his hands. "I will never forget what you gave me," he said, "but I will stop treating it like something I owe." Riley stepped closer and returned his coat. "Good, because kindness is not a contract." "Then what is it?" She considered the question as dawn seemed to return in her memory, pale and cold above a city neither of them had understood would change. "An invitation," she said. Marcus looked at her as though the word opened a door he had spent his life believing was locked. This time, when he asked whether he could see her again, Riley knew the answer belonged entirely to her. "Yes," she said, "but next time you buy the coffee." Monday morning arrived with clear skies, reopened classrooms, and the uncomfortable realization that surviving a crisis did not automatically teach anyone how to return to ordinary life. Riley Evans stood outside Harbor Point Elementary at 7:20, holding a paper cup of coffee while families moved past the newly updated visitor desk. The changes were subtle. A second staff member checked identification. Deliveries were logged before entering. The side entrance remained locked. Nothing looked like a fortress, exactly as Riley had requested, but nothing depended on trust alone anymore. Mrs. Alvarez greeted her with a hug. Principal Bennett handed her a stack of revised safety procedures, and 24 third graders welcomed her as though she had returned from another country. Caleb Morris left a folded note on her desk that read, "Thank you for not leaving me." Riley kept it beside her lesson planner all day. By 3:30, the school had settled into its familiar rhythm of pencil shavings, unfinished homework, and questions asked after the bell. It should have felt normal. Instead, Riley noticed every unfamiliar adult near the office and every dark car slowing beside the curb. Fear had not disappeared. It had simply learned better manners. Marcus understood that before she said it aloud. He did not send a driver. He did not wait outside the school. At 4:15, he texted a single message asking whether she still wanted coffee. Riley replied with the address of a small diner near Astoria Park. When she arrived 20 minutes later, Marcus was already seated in a booth near the back, wearing a charcoal suit without a tie. No security officer stood beside him. Daniel waited across the street, visible only because Marcus had promised there would be no hidden arrangements. 2 cups rested on the table. Riley examined hers before sitting. "Plain coffee, 1 sugar." I remembered. That line worked better the first time. Marcus looked almost amused. "I have limited experience with ordinary conversation. That may be the most honest thing you have ever said." She took the seat opposite him. Outside, late afternoon light moved across the park, turning the trees copper and gold. For several minutes, they spoke about ordinary things. Riley described a student who believed Benjamin Franklin had invented electricity by winning an argument with a cloud. Marcus told her Elena had begun calling Agent Whitman every morning for updates, despite being told the investigation was confidential. The conversation felt careful but real. No debts, no hidden questions. Then Riley noticed the folder beside Marcus. That looks serious. It is. He placed it on the table but did not push it toward her. Bellagio Holdings completed an internal review. 3 subsidiaries depended on contracts I cannot defend publicly. They will be closed or sold. 2 company officers are resigning. Every remaining division will submit to independent oversight. Riley studied him. You decided all of that in 3 days? I should have decided it years ago. How many people will lose their jobs? Fewer than 400. Each will receive 6 months of salary, health insurance through the transition and placement support. Riley heard the care hidden inside the numbers. And what will it cost you? More than money. Marcus looked through the diner window. Some people built their loyalty around the belief that I would protect the old system forever. Changing it means losing them. Are you afraid of that? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Riley realized he had begun doing something more difficult than confessing weakness. He had stopped disguising it as strategy. Then why continue? She asked. Marcus looked back at her. Because power that survives only in darkness is not strength, it is dependence. Riley wrapped both hands around her cup. Elena said that? No. Daniel? No. Then perhaps there is hope for you. A quiet smile touched his face before fading. There is another matter. He opened the folder. Inside were legal documents transferring the Harbor Point literacy donation into an independent educational trust administered by the school district and 3 community representatives. Marcus's name appeared only as the original donor. No control, no conditions, no connection to Riley. You removed yourself, she said. Completely. Why? Because the children should receive the benefit without owing me anything. Riley read the first page twice. Weeks earlier, Marcus would have solved the problem by making the gift larger. Now he had made his own influence smaller. This is different, she said. I hope so. It is. Marcus leaned back slightly, relief moving through his shoulders. The waitress brought pie without being asked. Riley looked at him. Did you order this before I arrived? Apple for you, plain cheesecake for me. You still did research. Mrs. Alvarez informed me that you always order apple pie. Riley narrowed her eyes. You questioned a school secretary about my dessert preferences? She volunteered the information after asking whether my intentions were honorable. And what did you tell her? Marcus looked down at his coffee. That I had not earned the right to have intentions. The humor left Riley's face. Marcus, I am not saying that to be dramatic. I am saying it because I understand what my world brought into yours. Your world is changing, not fast enough. Riley considered him across the table. She had spent weeks insisting that he not decide for her, yet he was now preparing to remove himself from her life in the name of protecting her. Control could wear the mask of sacrifice too. Do you want to see me again? She asked. Marcus went still. Yes. Then why are you speaking as though this is goodbye? Because wanting something does not make it safe. No, but fear does not make it wrong. He studied her, uncertain in a way she had never seen before. Riley reached across the table and turned the folder toward him. You are closing the businesses you cannot defend. You are cooperating with investigators. You gave up control of the donation. Those are choices. They matter. They do not erase the past. I did not ask you to erase it. Riley held his gaze. I am asking whether you plan to live differently. Marcus looked at the legal papers, the crowded diner, and the people passing outside without noticing him. Yes, he said. Then let me decide what that means for me. He nodded slowly. All right. Riley smiled. Good, because I would like a second date. This was a date? You bought coffee and pie. That is dangerously close. For once, Marcus Bellagio had no prepared response. Riley watched his surprise become a smile he could not hide. Outside, the sun lowered over Astoria Park, casting long bands of light across the diner floor. Nothing about the future was guaranteed. Julian still faced trial. Marcus still had years of consequences to accept. Riley still woke at night, remembering an alarm in a dark hallway. But for the first time, neither of them confused uncertainty with an ending. Marcus lifted his coffee cup. What happens on the second date? Riley lifted hers. You arrive without a folder. He glanced at the documents between them. That may be more difficult than changing an empire. Then you should start practicing. 6 months later, Riley Evans stood beneath the same Queen's bus shelter where she had once offered a stranger a cup of coffee, but the morning no longer felt cold. Spring had softened the city. The first light spread across the wet pavement in pale gold, and the trees along the avenue carried small green leaves that moved whenever a bus passed. Riley held 2 cups in a cardboard tray. One was plain coffee with 1 sugar. The other was hazelnut with 2 sugars because Mrs. Alvarez had declared that some traditions should survive every crisis. Marcus Bellagio arrived at 5:42 wearing a dark blue coat and no escort in sight. Daniel was nearby because Marcus had not become reckless, but the car waited a full block away, exactly where Riley had asked. Marcus stopped when he saw the cups. "You bought the coffee." Riley lifted one eyebrow. "You were late." He checked his watch. "I am 3 minutes early. For you, that is late." A smile touched his face, easier now than it had been months before. The city still knew Marcus Bellagio as a powerful businessman, though the name carried a different weight. Bellagio Holdings had completed its restructuring. Every questionable subsidiary had been sold or closed. Independent auditors published the results. Employees affected by the changes received the support Marcus had promised. Daniel remained beside him, not as a man required to protect secrets, but as the director of a company learning to survive without them. Julian Cross had accepted a federal plea agreement after the evidence, Paul Danner's testimony, and the records from former employees made denial impossible. His companies were placed under court supervision. The stolen funds were being returned through a restitution program. Paul received a reduced sentence for cooperating, and Marcus instructed his attorneys not to interfere. Nathan Cole was cleared completely. Grant Keller rebuilt the security system around transparency instead of fear. Every name that had once formed a question now had an answer. Every betrayal had reached its consequence. Harbor Point Elementary had changed too. The Literacy Trust operated under public oversight. New books filled the library. Weekend reading classes served families from 4 neighborhoods. The arts program returned after a local foundation matched the original donation. Marcus attended the opening ceremony but stood in the back row. He made no speech, he requested no plaque. Riley noticed him anyway, she always did. "You are thinking too much," she said. Marcus accepted the plain coffee she offered him. "I have been told that is a permanent condition. Alina told you that. Alina tells everyone everything." Riley laughed softly. Alina was well and had converted her dining room into an unofficial headquarters for the Literacy Trust. She called Principal Bennett twice a week, corrected Marcus whenever he sounded important, and treated Riley as family without ever forcing the word upon her. Mrs. Alvarez had recovered from the shock of becoming friends with a federal agent and now exchanged holiday cards with Nora Whitman. Caleb Morris had stopped checking every hallway when the fire alarm was tested. He still kept Riley's hand for a few extra seconds during drills, but he no longer froze. Healing had not erased what happened. It had taught each of them how to move without being ruled by it. Marcus looked toward the street where dawn brightened the windows. "I received the final notice yesterday," he said. "The investigation into Bellagio Holdings is closed." Riley studied him. "How does that feel? Quieter than I expected. You spent your whole life waiting for consequences. Peace probably feels suspicious." "It does." He took a sip of coffee. "But I am learning not to question every good thing," Riley smiled. Slowly, very slowly, a bus approached in the distance, its headlights glowing through the morning mist. Marcus reached into his coat pocket and removed a small object. Riley glanced at his hand, then at his face. "You promised no folders." "This is not a folder." He opened his palm. A simple brass key rested there. No velvet box, no dramatic gesture, just a key with a white paper tag attached. Riley read the address. It belonged to a narrow storefront 2 blocks from Harbor Point. "What is this?" she asked. "A lease." Her expression changed. Marcus corrected himself immediately. "A lease in your name, pending your approval." The owner agreed to hold the property for 30 days. No payment has been made. Riley waited. He had learned enough to continue carefully. "The Literacy Trust needs a permanent family reading center," Marcus said. "You described one with a small library, tutoring rooms, and coffee for parents who come after work. The building is available. The trust can fund it through the normal board process, or you can reject the idea completely." Riley turned the key over in her fingers. Months ago, Marcus would have bought the building and handed her the deed before asking what she wanted. Now he had brought her a possibility and left the decision untouched. "You remembered every detail," she said. "I remember everything connected to you." The words were the same, but they no longer carried danger. They carried attention. Riley placed the key in her coat pocket. "I will present it to the board," Marcus nodded. "That is all I hoped." Almost all. He looked at her. The bus pulled beside the curb, doors opening with a familiar hiss. Riley did not move toward it. "You came here 6 months ago, believing someone close to you had betrayed you," she said. Then a teacher with $32 in her checking account gave away someone else's coffee. Mrs. Alvarez still mentions that. She should, it was her coffee. Marcus smiled. But Riley saw emotion gathering beneath it. "You thought I saved you that morning," she continued. "I did not. I only reminded you that you could still choose what kind of man you wanted to be." Marcus looked down at the cup, warming his hands. "And if you had not stopped?" "Someone else might have, or maybe no one would have. That is why small choices matter." The bus doors closed and the vehicle pulled away without them. Marcus watched it disappear, then turned back to her. "I have something else to ask." Riley waited. This time he did not reach into his pocket. He did not prepare an offer, a solution, or a plan. "Will you build a life with me?" he asked. His voice remained steady, but his eyes did not hide the risk. Riley felt the full distance between the stranger under the shelter and the man standing before her now. He had not become harmless. He had become accountable. He had not erased his past. He had stopped allowing it to define every future choice. "Yes," she said. Marcus exhaled, and for one unguarded second the city lost all claim on him. Riley stepped closer and placed her hand in his. No audience noticed, no cameras waited. Dawn simply rose around two people who had learned that love was not rescue, possession, or debt. It was the freedom to choose each other after the truth was fully known. Marcus lifted their joined hands slightly. "Breakfast?" Riley looked at the untouched hazelnut coffee in the tray. "First, we deliver this to Mrs. Alvarez before she reports us missing." They walked toward Harbor Point as the city awakened around them. Behind them, the bus shelter stood empty. Ahead, the school windows caught the sunlight. Every secret had been revealed. Every threat had ended. Every promise had become a choice they were willing to keep. Marcus had once believed power meant never needing anyone. Riley had taught him otherwise with 5 minutes, one warm cup, and nothing requested in return. In the end, he did not repay her kindness. He allowed it to change him, and that was the only answer it had ever needed.